Hi everyone, thank you for being here. I'm going to read from Sick Transit Wagon. I'm going to read a story called I Never Heard Papi Play the Hawaiian Guitar. I never heard Papi play the Hawaiian guitar, an experience they say caused big, hard-backed men to halt at the crunch of a hand-jack moment in an all-fours card game, jaded women to rise from the fumbling laps of drink-sotted men, and broken-nosed barmen to pause in their rinsing of glasses in basins of grey water in those wrought iron balconied upstairs places facing the docks along South Key, where he and his Hawaiian guitar spent whole unbroken weekends after he had pocketed his Tally Clark pay envelope on Saturday mornings. But then there was a whole lot I didn't know about Papi, where he lived, whom he lived with, what he liked or didn't, were just of the few mysteries of my childhood. So when I heard him eulogized at his funeral service 31 years ago today as the finest player of the Hawaiian guitar in town, I was both surprised and not at all surprised. It wasn't that I didn't know anything about Papi, it's just that what I did know was gleaned solely through sparse but careful observation, knowledge from the tiniest seeds of clues scattered around my world. Some of the things I knew firsthand, the domestic control he exercised over us, even when seldom present in person, didn't help me to judge him in a balanced way when I was a child, but today I'm not going to weigh and measure him. I guess the Almighty, or maybe St. Peter, did the pluses and minuses of Papi's life long years ago as he approached the judgment seat, brown fedora in hand, seeking the final verdict of his 68 years. I put my money on St. Peter doing the job. I don't think Papi would have warranted a personal audience with the Almighty, with whom he had been conflated in my mind in my very early years. More than he would have been known as an individual human being by his august employer, Mr. Kennedy of William Kennedy and Sons Import and Export, who I suppose was like a god in the universe of Papi's world. Papi's job at Kennedy's was to go on the docks when the ships came in and to check the company's landed cargo and also do the same for cargo going out, import and export. I never saw what came in. We girls were screened from contact with that world where, it was reported, women tossed back their heads and laughed loudly with men who whistled and called out to them down at the dockside. But I did have first-hand knowledge of what went out, since I was often at the Kennedy and Company warehouse. As the eldest, it fell to me to go to Papi's workplace on Saturdays to seek him out and to wheedle him into sending some of the contents of his pay envelope back to Mommy, who would be waiting at home at Belmont, anxiously calculating in her head how the hope for $15 could be spread among his string of waiting creditors to keep all reasonably happy and in check for the coming week. Dressed up in last Easter's church dress, I boarded the bus as it moved sedately through quiet residential Belmont and disembarked on Lower Charlotte Street just where the bus sputtered to a crawl, edging its cautious way through the central market's overflow of vendors and their fruit and vegetables, fish and flesh, the perfume of ripe pineapple and the stench of hot animal blood mingling in a single intake of breath. I sauntered along Marine Square, so fascinated by the busyness of commercial life that I lost all sense of purpose and allowed the tide of swaying women who balanced on their heads big round split bamboo baskets perched on twists of cloth, and men who transported handcarts and boxes of goods from wholesalers to retailers to sweep me along at their pace. I forgot to go here because it's come along. As I passed the Cathedral of the Immaculate Conception, I made sure to make the sign of the cross across my chest to invoke good fortune in my quest. I strayed and delayed my unwilling arrival at my destination. From the bright white glare of the pavement, I peered through the deep shade of the overhanging upper floor balcony into the even darker interior. For a long while I could make out nothing. Then jute brown crocus bags emerged in soft focus and serried ranks. Wooden pillars rose to support the story above. And I could just pick out, way in the back, a platform on which was a wooden desk, a chair, and a man's pale face like a misplaced moon floating above a khaki chute. This man was the first of those I was dressed to impress on Saturdays. "You looking for your father?" he called out, and I nodded in embarrassed agreement. He then turned his face to make a last quarter phase, to shout into the darker recesses, "Jimmy still there?" At this, I stopped breathing, crossed my fingers, and said a silent prayer for if I was late through dawdling, and if the answer came, "No, Jimmy done gone already," indicating that Pappy had picked up his pay and left, that would be a disaster for us for the coming week. And how would I explain to Mommy why I had failed to do what she had sent me to do? But not this time. For today, just today, I will remember Pappy still being there, and him coming from the back space where he was doing whatever mysterious thing the tally clerks do when not on the docks. He's moving slowly and fluidly towards me, wiping his hands with a white handkerchief that he's looking at intently, not pausing as he folds it first in half, then in quarters, into a neat, deliberate square, edges and corners perfectly aligned, then folding over a corner to meet the opposite one, making a fat triangle that he pats and flattens, and is already placing with a straight palm to avoid it creasing into a back pocket by the time he gets to me. He's bending over for me to plant an unwilling but dutiful peck on his cheek, the sickly scent of tobacco rising from his pores, cancelling out, for that moment, the pervasive, undefinable, dusty smells of that gloomy cavern. We stand facing each other, each waiting for the other to say something first. "Mommy sent me for the money." I, unschooled in tact and diplomacy, break the spell. "And you wouldn't come to look for your father otherwise?" he challenges. For years and years, I repeated that scene just so, setting the warehouse. Characters, father and girl child. Situation, girl child requesting child support from father. And I wondered today whether I had been too simplistic, too judgmental in my reading of him all those many painful Saturdays of long ago. In that scene of the past, it isn't just Pappy and me there. Standing there with us, in us, were the people we thought we were, and the people we thought we should be. I was girl child, yes, but also convent girl. And so I was divided between two worlds. The one that contained the expectations and standards of the chaste world of Irish nuns and their Ivy students, my French Creole plantation owning and merchant class schoolmates, and the less privileged underworld of my own real life. As to Pappy, at work he was tally clerk, at home rarely visiting father, and there was also a secret life that none of us at home was privy to. Now I see that when Pappy and I encountered each other on Saturday mornings, we were in the gladiatorial arena of malehood in the mid-20th century, when role models were Jack Palance, Humphrey Bogart, and John Wayne. So when Pappy was walking towards me, he was walking towards a camera in a long shot. He had a role to play, that by moving to a tight close-up, he was trying to show that he is man. He is man, to be recognized by such, by a visible and invisible audience, and maybe above all, by himself. But back then, as I stood within the warehouse of William H. Kennedy and Sons Marine Square, Port of Spain, I understood nothing, only that my mother had sent me to my father, and I was being deflected by his challenge that I wouldn't come to see him if it were not to get money from him. It was a challenge I couldn't take up because it had a shape and size and facets and angles beyond my comprehension, and I didn't know how to deal with it at any level, joking or serious, as stated or as implied. I hung my head, ashamed that it was indeed so, that I wouldn't come to look for my father unless I had been sent for money, and that he had drawn that shameful ingratitude of mine and of the whole tribe of us dependents to the attention of his watching and listening audience of fellow men who themselves had women and children to contend with. Pappy throws off that pose and takes on the responsible, proud father one, saying, "Come over here and say good morning to Mr. Defoe." That is the Moonface's name, Manuel Defoe, and he is intent on spiking squares and rectangles of paper to bore at protruding nails behind his desk. I say, "Good morning, Mr. Defoe," and he, pausing in his rhythmic paper spiking, says, "So what happened? You're getting too big to call me Uncle Manny now. Come and give me a kiss, child." Child tiptoes and leans forward to brush the roughly shaven cheek with her lips, and she can't wait to surreptitiously turn her head and with seeming casualness wipe her lips against the stiff green organdy of her puff-sleeved arm. Pappy calls out into the darkness, "Oh, you come out here and see my daughter." Pepsi, Joe, and Sonny shuffle out, and one says, "Is she getting big, eh, Jimmy?" And the other says, "So this is the bright one." And Mr. Defoe calls over, "She must be getting good looks and brains from the mother." And they all laugh at this familiar joke that big people are always making on one another. Putting his arm around my shoulders, Pappy pulls me to him. My face is against his scratchy brown serge pants, and I move closer in so as not to face the gaze of the men, because I am ashamed under scrutiny. I suspect that they're saying something else under those words, and I can't guess at its hidden meaning. And I'm not sure who, if anyone, is supposed to answer. Their hair fades as Pepsi, Joe, and Sonny disappear back into the dim interior of the warehouse. Mr. Defoe resumes his paper spiking, and Pappy moves towards me and takes me to the rows of sacks, his arm still around my shoulders, my two steps matching his one. At the first row, he rolls over the loose sacking at the top of the nearest bag. At that slight disturbance, a mustiness dislodges from the sack. My hand reaches in and I take a handful of large seeds, dull, rough ovals, and I close my fist and rub the contents together. And as the full fragrance bursts out, I put my nose deep into my palm and inhale an intoxicating mystery, something like vanilla, but a vanilla that has journeyed through deep forest, damply slithering light, absorbing darkness, moisture, heat, decay along the way, complicating its innocent, sweet blankness. I do not know where tonka beans come from, how they grow, where they are bound, what is their use. I only drink in the beans' enigmatic essence. I drift onto another bag, to smooth, shiny, dark beans, whose cloying scent I know from comforting drinks on rainy nights, the thick, oily, welcome embrace of cocoa beans. These are rubbed, squeezed, and inhaled too. They leave a trace that make my palms glide frictionless along each other, silky smooth, soothing. We move to the last row, the thrill of forbidden pleasure, the adult's only pleasure, the spiky aroma of coffee beans, tickling high up in my nostrils like a sneeze that won't come. Rooted there, I bury my nose into first one handful, then another, astonished at the richness and complexity of scents and sensations that have come from such undistinguished, dark, dull scraps. Are not seeds just dropped and discarded, scattered and strewn from living trees, who carry on year after year producing these end products of their more attractive floral displays? Or so my child's mind runs. I squeeze, I rub, I inhale, transported in time and space, lost in my own world of the senses. The cathedral tower clock calls the Angelus. Everything is suspended in the loud metallic clang of clapper on bell ring fills the air, my head, my chest, with each of its heavy strikes. Bang, 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 pause, 4 cycles of 3, then a pause, followed by 12 sustained strikes. The sound lingers, vibrating in the air and the ear for long moments after, and as it fades, it is as if a spell has been broken and the true world has been revealed. Everything springs to life in a changed direction. The bells signal the end of the working week for Pappy and for everyone else in town, and I'm jolted back to Saturday in the Kennedy and Sons warehouse. Pappy is anxious to go, to meet up with the boys, to start his other life, free from duty to work and family, and I must get back to Mommy. We stand there together, he wanting to rush away, I wanting to detain him, for I've not yet got what I have come for. But I cannot ask again. Pappy has just treated me to a little distraction for my enjoyment, and I cannot bring myself to be crude and remind him of what I really came for. He gives every appearance of having forgotten why I am there. He glances at his watch. I look down on the grimy cement floor. My palms are sweating with fear that he has indeed forgotten, and I will have to say it aloud again. Will have to say that I've come to visit him, my father, only to get money. Pepsi, Joe, and Sonny come out of the darkness and go towards the long, stout, heavy wooden bar that slots into the iron brackets when they close the wide front doors, barricading us inside. They look towards Pappy and me, waiting. Pappy now seems to remember the purpose of my visit. Standing an arm's length from me, he draws from a back pocket a worn leather wallet, and he extracts, one by one, drawing out each note into a symphony, a $5 bill, pause, another $5 bill, longer pause, and finally, with a flourish and minute crash of cymbals from the soundtrack, a third $5 bill. He fans the 3 bills out, a gambler with a royal flush, and with the faintest of nods indicates that I should put my palm out, into which 1, 2, 3 $5 bills are placed flat, and then folded. My hot, damp fingers folded by his cool, dry ones over the limp, many times used paper. I untie my handkerchief, place the notes in the middle, tie all in a double knot, and loop one loose end through my waistband, knotting it securely in place. He bends his head for my parting cheek peck. I deliver, then turn and run out of the doorway, leaving my father until another Saturday. I set off along Marine Square, from which all life has drained, save for women, sprinting in the sharp white light, spilling out of the cathedral after their Angelus devotions. As I move my palm across my face to make the sign of the cross in gratitude for answered prayers, the essences of the crushed seeds invade my nostrils, and I feel a strange excitement and lightness. Pappy strides off in the other direction, to the wrought iron balconied upstairs clubs opposite the docks on South Quay, to meet up with the boys and to play his Hawaiian guitar, to the stupefaction of hard drinking, hard gambling men, and the adoration of soft, carefree women, reeling them in with his steel string vibration, which I shall never hear.